Hi, I'm Carrie and welcome to the Sego Fibers channel. Normally I make knitting podcasts, but today I'm making a special video to talk about 23 yarns for 2023. So basically these are 23 yarns that I've either knit with and loved, have and am excited to use, or am really looking forward to use in the future. I'll be talking about 5 yarns that are great for summer knits, 1 yarn for cotton crochet animals, 5 yarns that have like a luxury blend involved, 1 yarn that's great for socks, 5 yarns that are on the woolly side, and 6 small companies. So those are less yarn specific, but just more of like I want to talk about like this small hand dyer or this small farm yarn type company. And since I'm mostly a garment knitter right now, I thought it would be interesting to give a potential project cost for each of these yarns. So what I've done is I've chosen a garment pattern to go with each yarn I talk about, and I've calculated how many balls of yarn you would need and the potential cost for each size in that pattern. The 2 designers I pulled from are PetiteKnit and Andrea Mallory, and between the 2 of them we had a good gauge range. Neither one perfectly covered all the yarns I talk about, so together they make a good base. And the reason I'm pulling from 2 very popular designers is that oftentimes people might say, hey, I'm generally a size this with PetiteKnit, so if I'm interested in making a cable sweater, I'm not quite sure which one yet, but I'll just look at one of hers and I'll see how much yardage I need to make any cable sweater in the future. That's pretty much a nice starting point for a project. Oh, and I'd like to add a note about the information I include down here about the potential project cost. So sometimes in the middle row where it says skeins, you might see an asterisk next to the number of skeins required. And that asterisk indicates that there's just barely enough yarn for the project. And so if it says 6 asterisk, that means that 6 should be enough because you're within the like overage percentile range that designers often include. It might mean that you need to use part of your swatch in your project, or it might mean risking playing a little bit of yarn chicken. So if you were hoping to like modify the pattern or lengthen it or anything like that, you'll definitely need another skein. Or if you're like, I don't want to mess with yarn chicken, go ahead and get the extra skein, and you may or may not need it. The idea was to help you not have to buy an extra skein if you're not going to need it. Another thing in the skein row that you might see is 2 + 1 or 4 + 2 or something like that. And so at the end of this video, I include a couple pattern examples that use multiple colors of the same yarn. So that would be like 2 skeins of the main color and 1 skein of the contrast color, that kind of thing. So that's what that means when you see the plus sign. Oh, and I also want to say that none of these yarns are sponsored or gifted, and no one has asked me to make this video or talk about these yarns. I just thought it would be fun to give some project ideas. So all of these yarns have either been purchased by me or by my family as like birthday or Christmas presents. The only yarn that I didn't buy with money, I got as payment for doing a sample knit for a local dyer to me. So that one was just earned in a different way. All right, so let's get started with summer yarns. So the first yarn I'd like to talk about is the one I'm wearing. This is Sandnes Garn Line in the color Dusty Green. And here's the ball band for it. It's color 8561. And the pattern is the Soho top by Caidree. I made the size 3 and I used 5 balls and I used the recommended needles throughout. I used every bit pretty much of the 5 balls because I lengthened it quite a bit. I forget how long the pattern tells you to make the body, but I ended up lengthening mine to 13 inches before I did the I-cord bind off. And here's my swatch of it so you can see what the yarn is like. It stretches out nicely because of the garter stitch. Now to price out a potential project cost, I used Anker's Summer Shirt by PetiteKnit as an example. So here you can see the different sizes listed along with how many skeins you would need of Lina in order to make this shirt, and along with the potential cost. And I know costs can change a little bit depending on what store you're at, but this was the average cost I found. Our next yarn for summer is Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino. And this yarn is made up of 70% cotton and 30% merino wool. And this is the color Mole. And it is so soft. It's such a beautiful color. And Olive Knitting for Olive's colors are just spectacular. They have a great palette. My plan is to knit a Cumulus Tee with this, and so I will also put the specs of potential project cost for that. And I have made a Cumulus Tee once already, and here it is. I love it. My gauge was off for this one, so I'm determined with this yarn to get it right. And I just think a simple v-neck tee in this color would just be so wearable, and I'd get a lot of use out of it. And in case you're curious, the blue one I made was out of Sandnes Garn Line, which is also a good option for that pattern. After looking around online for where to buy Knitting for Olive, it seems to me like the most cost-effective way to buy it is ordering it from their website directly, so knittingforolive.com. And our next summer yarn is one I unfortunately don't have yet, but plan on getting at some point. It's Kakigori by Noro, and I love that the base color of this yarn is like a tonal single color, but it has color shifting tweedy bits throughout, so you still get lots of color fun, but it reads as mostly a particular color. It is DK weight. It's sold in 200 gram balls, which is unusual, and it has 660 yards. And the pattern I chose as a project example is the Poppy Tee by PetiteKnit. And for most of these sizes, you need two 200 gram balls. However, if you're in the smaller sizes, you can find some summer patterns that only use one 200 gram ball. One example would be the Holst Tee by Rebecca Clow, and I believe the first 3 sizes only use one ball. Or you could look for tanks and things like that. Our next summer yarn is also by Knitting for Olive, and it's their Pure Silk yarn. This is the copper colorway. And I just love how this yarn catches the light. It's 100% pure silk, and it's light fingering. And the pattern I chose for this one is the June Top by PetiteKnit. And this is more of a basic tank, so you don't need as much yarn for this project. And again, I found it was less expensive to order directly from Knitting for Olive. The only downside is that you can't see all the colors in person, but they do take good photos. This next yarn I want to talk about is one I consider to be a diamond in the rough. So this is a Yarn Bee yarn from Hobby Lobby, and I really love it. So Hobby Lobby isn't known for having much in the way of wool yarns. However, they do have lots of acrylics if that's good for your project. They also have good summer yarn. And this summer yarn is Yarn Bee Bamboo-tiful. Gotta love the name, right? And this yarn is 50% cotton and 50% rayon from bamboo. Hence the name. And this particular ball is the color Rose. It's such a pretty pink. So this yarn is sold in 113 gram balls and has 257 yards. I also have it in the color Cognac, which I also really love. And this is the first color that I'm knitting with. I'm currently making the Margot top by Gregoria Fibers, and this is my swatch for it. Such a pretty pattern. I really love it. I'm really enjoying it. It's a really nice knit. And the yarn feels very soft and smooth. I'm really happy with this yarn. I love it. Oh, and the pattern I chose as a sample for this yarn is the Rigmore Tee by PetiteKnit. The only downside to Yarn Bee, in my opinion, is that they discontinue their yarn pretty frequently. So this yarn is not discontinued yet as far as I'm concerned, but it's possible that it might only be here for this summer. So if you see it and you're interested, you should probably pick it up. It's worth it, and they have some really pretty colors. And Hobby Lobby has all of their yarn on sale for 30% off every other week, so you're pretty much guaranteed a good deal. So those are 5 summer yarns to try, and now let's talk about a yarn for making cotton crochet animals. So I came across this yarn when I was looking for materials to make little animals for this book. This book is The Animal Friends of Pika Pow by Schenkel. And I believe she has 3 editions of this out now. This is the first one, then there's a second volume and a third volume. So you have lots of really, really cute animals to choose from. And here's what the animals look like in this book. I went through a phase of making these for a bunch of my nieces and nephews and also my kids. So the ones I have to show you here is the little caiman alligator. Thread on him. I just think he's so cute. And he actually stands up because of his tail, so that's kind of nice. But yeah, I loved his party hat. It just looks so fun, and so many of her little animals have cheeks, which I think are so cute. And she also recommends using these little safety eyes, and I really think that makes it pop and gives it that extra something special. This little bow tie. I just thought that was really fun. What's great about this book is that she shows you all the steps of crochet as well. And so, like, even if you've never crocheted before, you can use this book to figure it out. And if you're still uncertain, YouTube is great for looking up like a specific stitch or skill. The crochet hook that she recommends you use is a USC or 2.75 millimeter. And so this one's mine. I love that it's just like a really soft metallic blush pink. It just makes me happy whenever I use it. This is just a really basic one from either Michaels or Hobby Lobby. Nothing fancy, but it does the job. And I think the hook looks really small, and I would not think that it would work with a DK weight cotton yarn, which is what's called for, but it totally works. Yeah, I was very surprised that it's actually spot on. So I was looking around at various stores near me and also online to find a nice cotton yarn that's the right weight, and you need a bunch of colors to make these little animals. So in my search, I came across Hobbii.com, which is based out of Denmark, and they have a ton of colors. I'd recommend just checking out their website and just seeing what they have. They have a whole variety of stuff. And the yarn I used is Rainbow Cotton 8/8. I'm not quite sure what that means. It might refer to plies. I'm not sure. But this is the unmercerized cotton. They have a mercerized version, which I think is shiny, but I like this matte cotton better. Yep, it's 100% cotton, 50-gram balls. Your pretty basic stuff. I'm not sure that I would make a garment out of it, but I think it's absolutely perfect for these little animals. The only downside about this book is that it doesn't tell you exactly how much yardage you need in order to make something, so I kind of had to guess. But over time I figured out that a little guy like this or anything similar to him, you need about 3 balls of the main color and then 1 each of all the other colors. And so another one, so like this rhinoceros, for example, I've made him before, and he used 3 balls, I think, of the gray and then probably 1 each of the other ones. So that's a nice ballpark. I've also made the dragon before, and since that one's bigger, it used 5 balls for the main color. So hopefully that gives you a ballpark. What I love about this yarn is that it's inexpensive to begin with, and they also have periodic sales. I don't think they're that frequent. It might be every few months, I don't know, but it does go on sale, and shipping to the US isn't bad, and they have over 100 colors. Not all of them are always in stock, but they have a lot to choose from. So I'll try and show you a sample of the colors that I've picked up over the years, just so you can kind of get an idea for what they have. That was like a grayish brown color. You can take my word for it. I think I was envisioning that color to be an otter. We'll try again. Here are just a few of their colors. Another little animal I made from that book is for my daughter, and I made her this little panda. I think she's so cute. There's her little tail. Personally, I think the one I thought was the most fun to make was the rhinoceros. That one was just lots going on, and he has underwear and his shorts come on and off, and I like the cute design on his shirt. So a couple years after I made these for my nieces and nephews, I got a couple pictures from my sister-in-law showing me how my niece was actually playing with the little unicorn that I made. And it was so cute. She was making like a little flower crown, a bridle, and saddle for it. My sister-in-law's had really good feedback about these. She's put it in the washing machine multiple times to clean it, and it looks good as new. Like, it hasn't faded or pilled or anything like that. I couldn't even tell that it had been washed. It looked good as new. So this yarn seems to wear really well. Next, let's look at some yarns with luxury blends. First up is And Make DK by the Fibre Company. I've seen this in person at my local yarn store, and it is so soft. It is a DK weight yarn and has 137 yards per 50 gram ball, and it's made of 55% wool, 35% alpaca, and 10% linen. And you can really see the linen in the blend because it doesn't take the dye the same way as the rest of the fibers. That's one of the things I love so much about it. It gives it such a beautiful texture and makes it look maybe slightly more rustic while still being incredibly soft. The pattern example I used for this one is the No Frills sweater by PetiteKnit, and I've put the potential project cost here. The colors are so great, and yeah, I really look forward to using this one. Next up is another yarn I'm looking forward to trying, and I haven't seen this one in person, but I've looked online and the colors look amazing. It's Cantata by Cascade, and it's an Aran weight blown yarn, and I was really excited to find a blow yarn that was less expensive than often blown yarns can be, and I think it will work really well for a lot of patterns. The pattern example I have for this yarn is the Champagne Cardigan by PetiteKnit. Cantata is made of 70% cotton and 30% merino, which I think makes it great for spring and summer weather and those transitional seasons when you just need a little something to keep the chill off. This next yarn is one I really love, and it's Noro Silk Garden Sock Solo, and this particular color is T82. And I just love that it's mostly pink, but there's still lots of other tweedy colors in it. It's such a beautiful way of color shifting, I think. And it's made up of 40% wool, 25% silk, 25% polyamide, and 10% mohair. It is single ply, and it's sport weight. It's sold in 100 gram balls and has 328 yards. You could use one ball to make a really cool pair of rustic luxury socks, or you could use it in color work, which is what I did. This is the Phosphane sweater by Inga Semmingsen. I love that it uses both stranded color work and cables. That's exactly what I was looking for at the time, and I just love it. So you can see here how I used it as one of the colors. I think it's really fun to see color shifting in color work. And you can tell, like, I still have the majority of a ball left. The sample pattern I have for this yarn is The Traveler by Andrea Mowry. And I believe this is more of a yarn guzzler kind of pattern. However, I think it would be really pretty in this yarn, and I think the gauge works out well. This next yarn I think is surprisingly versatile, especially for a lot of the fluffy sweater and cardigan patterns that have been coming out, and it is Brushed Alpaca Silk by Drops. It is an Aran weight fluffy yarn made of 77% alpaca and 23% silk, and it is sold in 25 gram balls and is 153 yards each. And I would personally get it from woolwarehouse.co.uk because they have a lot of yarn at a good price, and shipping to the US is only like $6, so it's a really good value. And the pattern example I chose for this one is the Cumulus blouse by PetiteKnit, and I love that no matter what size you pick, it's going to be less than $40, which is a pretty good deal. And this yarn sometimes goes on sale, so that's a plus. This next yarn is one I was totally stunned by when I saw in person, and it is Moonshine Fine by Juniper Moon Farm. It also has a worsted weight sister just called Moonshine. The fiber content is 30% baby alpaca, 30% wool, 25% polyamide, and 15% silk. It is so soft and lustrous. Like, It really is like Moonshine. Like, that is a great name for it. It's a sport weight yarn and is sold in 100-gram balls, and the yardage is 437 yards, which is great for a sport weight yarn. So I feel like you're getting a good amount of yarn for your money. That's it for the luxury blends. Now let's look at sock yarn. The sock yarn I have for us today is also by Drops, and it is Nord. So this yarn is 45% alpaca, 30% polyamide, and 25% wool. So it is very soft, still has 30% polyamide for strength and wool for warmth, although alpaca is for warmth as well. It's a really nice fiber. I love that this yarn has a bit of a halo. I think you can see it even here. Ooh, here's another color. I love their color choices. They have really good options. This is color 1, color 23, and this kind of caramel color. Color 7 was a nice beige. And this pinkish color is color 20. And you can see I'm using some of these in this kind of swatchish thing I have going on. I love the mixes because it looks a little bit more rustic while still being soft. And yeah, there you go. You can see some of the halo coming out from the alpaca on top. And if you look at the Drops Nord hashtag on Instagram, either Drops Nord or Drops Nord socks, something like that, when you see socks made in this, they are just stunning. They just look so comfortable and soft, and I'm really excited to make some socks with these, particularly these colors. I want to find a colorwork pattern for these, I think that will be really pretty, and those colors will be perfect for fall. The pattern example I chose for this yarn is the Everyday Socks by PetiteKnit, and for all of her sizes, they just need 2 balls. So you could get 2 different colors and stripe them, or just use 2 of the same color and make them plain. But yeah, so I think this is a nice yarn to try out. And again, I would just get this from Wool Warehouse since that seems to be the best value to me. All right, now let's look at woolly yarns. First up, we have Patagonia by Juniper and Moon Farm. And this is the color Sand. It is a sport weight yarn and 100% merino. I believe it's non-superwash. It is so bouncy, fluffy, and soft. I really can't get over this yarn. I love it so much. I would love to use this for so many things. The color palette in this yarn is fantastic. Ugh, I love so many of them. It's just, oh, I wish you could feel it. It is so soft. I am currently using this yarn to make sweater number 15 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and this is what it looks like with cables. I am really excited about this project. I currently have it on hold because I'm working on summer knits right now, but it is waiting very happily in its project bag until the weather cools down. The pattern example I chose for this yarn is the Stockholm Sweater V-neck by PetiteKnit, and I think it would be very lovely in this. This yarn is sold in 100-gram skeins, and it comes in at 382 yards, which is also pretty good for sport. This next yarn is another new favorite, and it's Cascade 220 Sport. And this is the non-superwash version, and it's sold in 50-gram skeins like this. And here's the tag. This one is color 9675. It's a nice rich brown. One of the things I love about this yarn is that it has so many colors, and it's perfect for color work. So I've chosen these 5 colors to make a cardigan, and the pattern example I chose for this yarn is Stripes by Andrea Mallory. That way it's a basic sweater as far as construction, but it helps you play with color if you're into that. And even though this yarn isn't merino or anything like that, it is very soft. So I am personally really a fan of Peruvian Highland wool, especially this one. It's the softest Peruvian that I've come across. This next yarn is special because it comes on a cone. This is Holst Supersoft by Holst Garn, and it is a 500-gram cone, light fingering weight yarn, and has 3,140 yards approximately, and it is 50% merino and 50% Shetland wool. So it has the rustic nature of Shetland, but all the softness of merino. And I'm really impressed with this. I wasn't sure how rustic this would be, but this is even before washing and it feels good to me. I'm excited to knit with it. And I love that it has so much yardage. And this is the color Bokhara. And Supersoft is also sold in 50-gram balls, which is great for color work or smaller projects. So you don't have to get 500 grams of each color. You can get a 50-gram ball, which is about $4, or you can get the cone for about $35. So it's a pretty nice option. I was looking around on Ravelry, and if you were to make a fingering weight sweater, one cone should be more than enough for any size sweater. So if that's what you're interested, one cone should be good to go. If you want to hold it double, like I've seen a lot of people do, it might take a little bit more than a cone, at least according to the example pattern that I have here, which is the Jenny sweater by PetiteKnit. Another thing I love about Holst is that they have so many colors. Their color range is absolutely fantastic, and I'm excited to try more. This next yarn is another one that's great for color work, and it's Jamieson and Smith's 2-ply jumper weight. I have used this yarn a lot for mittens. I've used the Knit Like a Latvian book, and there are so many really pretty color work mittens in here. I think these make fantastic gifts, especially if you're not quite sure what size to make of something. These are kind of a one-size-fits-all thing, and it doesn't take all that long, and the patterns are just stunning. Like, there are really so many gorgeous mittens in here with lots of options. Some use 2 colors, some use more. You can really just pick what interests you. They're nice and warm, and this yarn is perfect for these patterns. Here are some of the leftovers that I have, or I'm not sure if leftovers is the right word. I think I used only a tiny bit of this. So this one is the color FC50 mix, nice heathered pink. This one was 29 mix. This is a dark blue green, and this is 82 mix. And this is a really fun purple and FC21 mix. They have so many amazing colors, and they're sold in 25-gram balls, which is great for color work, especially accessories. I get mine from Wool Warehouse because that seems to be the best deal, and they seem to have all the colors. However, in case you want to make a garment out of it, a really good option is the Stone Crop Cardie by Andrea Mallory. And if you look in the project pages for this patterns, I saw that someone made a Stone Crop Cardie out of this yarn, and it looks stunning. It was such a good choice for it. This next yarn is both really woolly, rustic, and luxury, and it is Le Cashmere and Lambswool by Bee Bamboo-tiful. This is definitely a treat yourself kind of yarn. It is so pretty. This particular one is the color medium burgundy, and I saw this on sale at my local yarn store and I just had to pick it up because it's so my color. I've used this yarn once before to make a hat for my husband for Christmas, and for him I used the color gray-brown. I love that it was like a warm neutral, somewhere between brown and gray, and it has like these little nubby flecks, so you can see it's not just a single solid color. And like even in this burgundy, you can see bits of light and dark, and little spots of brighter pinks in there, along with the more neutral muted tones. So I have 2 skeins of this one, and I plan on making myself a hat. So for my husband's hat, I held 2 strands together to get a bigger gauge. This yarn is woolen spun, and let's see, it is 12.5% cashmere and 87.5% lambswool from Scotland. It's definitely like rustic and soft, and it even softens up more with wear. Something I find so interesting about this yarn, I find that it has like a spicy, cedary scent. I don't know if that's just mine from where it came from where I bought it, or if that's just the yarn in general, but this is very special. The pattern example I chose for this yarn is the Weekender Light by Andrea Mallory, and so this is holding the yarn single just by itself. I think this yarn would make a really beautiful luxury but laid back kind of sweater. Alright, so those are our lovely woolly yarns. Now let's look at some small companies. First up is a local to me hand dyer, and it's Yarn Nouveau. And the dyer behind this beautiful yarn is Alicia, and I had the pleasure of making a sample knit for her shop, and in return she paid me with yarn. So I thought that was great. And this is the swatch from that. This uses her Merino sport base held with her Alpaca lace base. It is so soft. This is the color Ironwood. I'm not sure if it's really coming out. Okay, if I hold it like this, that's a bit more true to life. It blows out when I hold it up, but you can see that it's a really beautiful tonal brown. And the yarn she gave me in return, I got a few skeins of her Yak DK base. This is the color Bruff. This is one of my favorite golden colors that I've come across. It shimmers, it's so soft. And this yarn is 60% superwash merino, 20% silk, and 20% yak. And I love that the silk gives it the shine and the yak gives it that richer deep color and some of that heathered look. So I'm going to hold this together with Drops Kid Silk, and this is the color Curry. I believe it's number 30. So I'm going to hold these together to make a sweater number 18 by my favorite things knitwear. I'm excited about that one. And the other base I'm trying is her single yak merino base. You can tell I have a thing for yak yarns. I'm very excited about these. This is a fingering weight yarn, single ply, and this is the color Lydia, and this is the color Wiccan. So these are actually the same dye formula, but this one has less and this one has more, so they go really well together. And I'm going to use these to make a Robinia Light by Ann Bensel. I'm going to hold each of these with coordinating mohairs. I found this one to go with the light color, and I'm going to find a darker one I haven't picked out yet to go with the darker color. This light pink is color 40. I think it will be a really nice kind of contrast and help pull this shade a bit lighter, and I'm going to find a darker mohair to pull this one a little bit darker but still stay in the same color range. The makeup of this yarn is 65% superwash merino wool, 20% silk, and 15% yak. And the yardage on this is fantastic. It's 530 yards per 120 gram skein, so you get a lot for it. So if I were to pick a sample pattern for this yarn, I'm going to use Yak DK held single, and the pattern is the Winter's Beach Cardi by Andrea Mowry. So I think that would be a really beautiful pattern for this yarn as well. The next small company I'd like to highlight is Primrose Yarn Co. And I picked up a skein of their Roan DK yarn, and I'm really surprised and happy with it. So the yarn that I've known them for is their Homestead Sport, which is a yarn that's similar to Spin Cycle as far as like color changing goes, except there's a bit more yardage, so that's nice. And they also have a Homestead worsted, I think, option. Anyway, it's either DK or worsted, and it's heavier weight, so that one also changes color. And I had seen on their website that they had like a kind of a normal kind of solid looking skein option, which is Roan DK, and I was like, well, if they have all these color changing fun yarns, why would I ever get one of these? But when I saw this in person during the Utah yarn crawl, I was like, oh, that's why. It feels and looks so nice. So this yarn is a 3-ply DK. It's 230 yards per 100 grams. It's 60% American superwash merino and 40% domestic non-superwash merino. And it's just all made in America, so that's pretty cool. And then Yeah, this is the colorway Static. So I assume since it has a colorway name like that, that it's dyed. But it looks like this really beautiful, kind of like a warm gray color. It's definitely a cross between gray and brown, which I really like. I foresee this being a hat, or I could use it in color work, but I would love to make a hat with it. So last year when the Utah Yarn Crawl came around, I tried to hit as many stores as I could, and I made it to about 5 of them, I think. This time my ambitions were much lower and my goal was 1. And so the one that I went to was Wasatch and Wool up in Park City. This is the little sheet that they give you to keep track of everything, and you get stamps and whatever to mark off all the stores you go to. And if you check off all of them, the last store you go to, you give them your sheet and you're entered to win like a giant prize. So that's pretty cool. But they did give everyone who entered or joined the yarn crawl like a cool bag. So I was happy to pick that up. Like I said, I picked up this skein at Wasatch and Wool. The reason I wanted to go to that one was because I'd never been there before, and I was blown away. Like, totally recommend that yarn store if you're visiting. Like, a lot of people visit Salt Lake City and Park City for skiing, and so I'd say while you're here, make sure you swing by Wasatch and Wool because the people there are so incredibly nice. There's not a snob around, and yet they have everything you could want. They have really budget yarns, and they also have like really nice, more expensive yarns. And so they have everything in between. They're really there to help you. They just seem to have the best customer service. They were so helpful and friendly. Yeah, so I had a great time, and it was really hard for me to choose what to take home with me, but I'm really happy I landed on this one. And the pattern example I chose for this yarn is the Festival Sweater My Size by PetiteKnit. And I like that one because the yarn seems like similar enough to the ones used as far as like it's a single strand of DK, it's plied in a round fashion. And so it's like, okay, it seems like a good sub for this one. And because it has little stripy things, you could also test out a couple different colors. The next small company is one I haven't tried yet but would absolutely love to, and is Woolly Mammoth Fibre Company. And she is based in Northern Ireland, and she locally sources all of her yarns and has them locally spun. So they either spun really close to her or they're spun in Wales. And some of her yarns are woolen spun, which is really neat, and others of her yarns are worsted spun. So you have the option. And the special thing, even more than that, is that she naturally dyes all of her yarn. And she's really good at it because not only can she do tonals and solid colors, she can do variegated, which I think is really cool and is particularly tricky with natural dyeing. And Emma, the dyer from Woolly Mammoth, she also has a really great podcast here on YouTube that I would highly recommend. I love watching her videos. She's really into gardening as well, and so she just lives in a really beautiful place. And she has a nice Instagram that has a similar vibe as well if you want to follow her there. One yarn that she seems to always have in stock is her Natural Sock 4-ply, and it is 50% BFL, Blue Face Luster, and 50% Cheviot. It's a fingering weight yarn and has 437 yards per 100 grams. You can use it for socks if you use a really tight gauge, or you can use it in garments. And so the pattern example I have for this one is Sparky by Andrea Mowry. And I thought this was fun because it could be a really fun way to try out both a tonal yarn and a variegated. Because I love her variegated yarns, but I'm sometimes not sure how to use them in a garment. But I think as a contrast color and a colorwork sweater would just be beautiful. So that's what I would like to do whenever I pick up some of her yarn. The next small company I'd like to highlight is Woolfie Yarn, which I found randomly on Etsy. And so when I looked into their shop, they just seem to have a whole bunch of really cool, interesting yarn blends on cones. So if you are a cone yarn lover, I recommend checking them out. They have some interesting finds. So the yarn I chose to highlight for this one is Alpaca cotton, and it is a DK sport weight blown yarn, which is really cool. And the makeup of it is 56% alpaca, 44% Peruvian Pima cotton. So again, it's another spring fall transitional piece that will not be too hot. And because of that, I chose for the example pattern the Agnet cardigan by PetiteKnit. And this yarn is sold in both 100 gram options and 50 gram options. I'm not quite sure if they are cones, cakes, or skeins, but either way you get the yarn. So if you see down here in the skein row where if it says like 5.5, that means 5 100 gram skeins and 1 50 gram skein. Or you could round it up to 6 and just have some extra buffer, but that's up to you. Because it's a more budget-friendly yarn, I decided to go with a pattern that has a texture that typically uses more yarn. And so this is a more wallet-friendly way to make a more yarn-hungry pattern. And I think this cardigan would just be beautiful in a yarn like this. And because it's a DK sport weight, I think this yarn would be very versatile for a lot of patterns. Woolfie Yarn is based out of Germany, and they also have their own website if you want to find them that way. And the next small company is one I also found on Etsy. And this shop I think is pretty cool because they have both their own line of yarn as well as other brands that can be harder to find. And this shop is Maruma Yarns on Etsy, but they also sell a lot of interesting yarns that are well priced. And the one I chose to highlight is Donegal Kilcara Tweed, and this is an Aran weight tweed yarn that you can get either in 100 gram cakes or 50 gram, but the color options for her tweed yarns are just beautiful. She has so many cool things and lots of different fiber blends for her tweeds too. So some have mohair, some have merino, all sorts of various things. And the pattern example I chose for this yarn is the Nurtured sweater, and I have it here. This yarn is Lamb's Pride worsted in the color mulberry. You can kind of see stitch pattern there. This is a perfect pattern for any yarns that happen to be thick or thin, or look a bit more rustic, or anything like that. It's a very forgiving pattern. It seems to look really good with yarns that have variation. So I'm thinking like, oh, I bet a tweed sweater in this pattern would look really cool. And again, with this yarn, it's offered in 100 gram and 50 gram options. So if I say 6.5, that means 6 100 gram skeins and 1 50 gram skein if you want to be precise. And Maruma Yarns is based out of Latvia, so the shipping might take a little bit, but it seems reasonable. And the last small company I want to highlight is actually a general category, which are farm yarns. Finding these skeins is a really cool way of trying out different types of wool. Maybe you've only ever knit with merino, maybe some Peruvian Highland wool, maybe some Blue-Faced Leicester, but have you tried CVM or Corriedale or Romney or Targhee or Rain Relay? Like there's so many fun options out there. Going to like a yarn festival and looking for local growers or local farms and just trying out these different wools can really it's a really fun way to explore new things. So the first example yarn I have is this CVM yarn. It's DK weight. It's from Nottawonk Springs in Cornish, Utah. And so yeah, not too far from me. And I love the color. It's another warm gray. And here's the label that came with it. So I'm pretty sure that's a CVM sheep right there. And there's their email if you're ever curious. They have a Facebook page, which I think is their main web presence. And there's the details for this one. Yeah, the name of the sheep was Fancy Pants. It's really fun when you get to know the name of the sheep. And I used that yarn in the phosphane sweater. And so yeah, that's the brown color there. I think it came out beautifully. And the main color of the sweater is their sport weight Corriedale yarn. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Another farm yarn I picked up recently is this Targhee Rambouillet wool, which was grown and processed in Montana, and I picked it up last time I was in Montana. And so this is just so soft and squishy. I would really compare it to the Patagonia Merino. Like there's a lot of similarity between the two. Like this one has some thick and thin bits. I believe this one's a 2-ply. Let's see. Yep, it's a 2-ply. And this yarn is by Ranching Tradition Fiber. And yeah, there's their website and info. This is the color Granite, and I also picked up one in their color Pine. Thought these were so beautiful together. They are so soft, and I'm very excited to knit with these. I'm thinking of doing something like a colorwork cowl or something, maybe add some more yarn of different colors I have in stash to it. We'll see. So I believe you can buy this yarn online. So I used this yarn as a project example in case you were interested or have trouble finding farm yarn near you. So the example pattern I chose is Wool and Honey by Andrea Mowry, and I think this one looks so good with woolly yarns, and I think it would look especially nice with farm yarn. You could wear it going to a farmer's market and getting some local honey, wearing your local wool sweater, getting all your local vibes on. Alright, so that's all the yarns that I have either loved knitting with, have and am really excited to use, or would love to try in the future. Let me know what you think. Have you knit with any of these before? If so, I would love to hear in the comments below what you've made with it and what you think about it. Does it pill a lot? Does it wear pretty well? Is it really soft? Is it itchy? Let me know. Your comments can be a good resource for other people watching the video to get project ideas. Thank you for joining me for this roundup, and I will see you next time. Happy knitting. Bye.